Hi, everyone. We had a bunch of attendees. Life is tense right now. Life is upside down. So usually I'd wait a little longer, but I think we're going to get started today. Steph, do you want to, and just, we're going to have questions at the end. This will be recorded, so if you missed the first 5 minutes or you need something later, this will be provided as a video to everyone. Steph, you want to introduce yourself?
Of course. Thanks, Brooke. Hi, everyone. My name is Stephs Schmitt. I'm an agency development manager at Google. I've been partnering with Mason Interactive for the past 4 years. And today I'm here to talk specifically on education and give you some of those latest trends as well as strategies on how to prepare for the upcoming fall enrollments.
Great. And I'm Brook Shepard. I'm the founder and CEO of Mason Interactive. We'll talk about us super briefly. I'm going to start sharing I'm going to speak for about 10 minutes, and then Steph's going to speak for about half an hour, and then we're going to do questions at the end. If you have any questions during the presentation, please chat them. As you can see in the right hand, I know some of you are already chatting. You can chat questions in there, and Mira will be moderating this from her work from home situation in Manhattan. So I'm going to get started by, let's see if this works, by turning screen share on, sharing a specific application, and doing this. Steph, can you see my screen?
Yep, I can see it. All looks good.
Great. So measuring enrollment for marketing success. I'm Brooke, that's Steph. You just heard us talk for a second. Very, very briefly, because really what I'm trying to do today is to be of use to you and not go on about myself. Very briefly, we're an agency, Midtown Manhattan, about 20 employees, about 40 clients, heavily focused in the EDU space. My wife is a high school principal. I'm on the board of a school in Brooklyn. All I think about almost all the day is education. We do search and lead generation and social media and SEO and display and email and ORM and remarketing and content and video for our education clients. I'm going to talk today, there's our office, a picture of our office, that's nice. I'm going to talk about what we're seeing across our education clients up until yesterday. I want to have a quick discussion around attribution. I want to talk about a student bucket, and then I want to give a client example, and I'll be done in 10 minutes. So the first piece of data I want to share is the cost per thousand CPM versus click-to-conversion rate for our clients between March 1st and April 4th. This is all of our EDU clients. We have clients that spend $500,000 a month. We have clients that spend $2,000 a month. This is all of them put together. And by click-to-conversion rate, I mean a visitor from paid media that turned into a lead. Some people's leads are long forms, some people's leads are short forms, some people count phone calls. This is all of it. So what we see is that the CPM, and this is for Google and Facebook and all of it, although it's mostly Google for the EDU clients. The CPM, and if anyone attended our webinar last month, they saw this, the CPM dropped for our clients from around $32 to around $15 between March 1st and April 4th. So that means that media was cheaper if you stayed in the market. Click to conversion rate, you could call it conversion rate, CVR, stayed about flat. So this is rounded up to the nearest number. So there are days when it went up to 3 and there are days when it went down to 1.5. Mostly it was around 2. That's really where the conversion rate for our clients stands. Some clients have higher, some clients have lower. So what we saw in the early part of the world changing was that conversion rate stayed steady. People still applied to schools, but the cost of getting in front of those students was lower. Now, a lot of you have seen that. This is an updated slide, March 1st through June 8th. It's a little different. It's still down, right? Conversion rate, click to conversion rate is not as steady over the longer term, but it's basically steady if we were to draw a trend line. By the way, this orange arrow to the left of that was the last slide, to the right of that is the next slide. So what do we see? We see a huge spike in CPMs for our clients at the end of May. And why is that? It's because, I think it's because most of our clients' fiscal years start in June and they have to spend the money or lose it by the end of the year, or they're struggling to hit enrollment targets and they found a few more dollars and they're all going into market. But generally speaking, what we're seeing still, and not for all clients, generally speaking, what we're seeing is a cheaper media cost with a flat conversion rate, click to conversion rate. If we were in the room together, I'd ask if anyone had any questions, and I can't do that now, but here we are. Another metric of that, again, this is all of our EDU clients across all the platforms of advertising we manage, is cost per lead versus impressions. So impressions is in purple, going down a little bit eventually. Cost per lead is holding flat in the, I'm going to call it $100 range. We do have days where things drop down to $65. We do have a day where our average client was at $130. It's in the $100 range. So that makes sense. If the conversion rate, the click to conversion rate is this should be CPL, is holding steady, and the media is cheaper, you will convert students more profitably at a lower rate. So that's what we're seeing across our basket of EDU clients. What I want to do now is talk very briefly about attribution. So the two main attribution models that our clients use are first touch attribution, that gives credit for the application to the first touch in the digital funnel, or last touch attribution, that gives credit for application to the last touch in the digital funnel. Some clients mix them, there's other ways of doing it. These are the two main ways. So if we look at a very traditional marketing funnel with Google, which is most of what EDUs are doing, we have at the top of the funnel awareness, and that can be YouTube, and we'll call it the Google Display Network, GDN, all the way down to remarketing, which is what the most profitable part of it is. So this is a very traditional funnel. If you're using first touch attribution, you're going to say, well, let's imagine that I want to go get an MBA, and served an ad for NYU's part-time program on YouTube. That would be top of the funnel. I might then actually fill out a lead form later on and then convert via remarketing later when I'm reading the New York Times later. If I convert at the end of the funnel via remarketing, that's last touch. That last touch attribution would credit to that app. The first touch would give it to YouTube. So I hope I didn't bungle that. But these are the two main ways of looking at this. Neither is wrong. Both have their virtues. Part of our job is to discuss this with clients, but ultimately clients decide what their model is. So, okay, we shared some data from our clients. We talked about attribution briefly. I want to talk about attribution in a different way, which is we think about things as a student bucket. We think about your website as a bucket that's constantly leaking. People decide not to go to school. People decide to apply to a different school. People give up, whatever it is. If you imagine your website as a bucket with social and SEM and direct sales and all sorts of different things going into it, the reality is that your bucket is leaking all the time. So if you were to have a first touch attribution system and to devalue display advertising, you might say, and a lot of our clients have done this over the last couple of months, I need to focus on efficiency. I need to be as efficient as humanly possible. This is not a time to waste funds. I need to cut back. My endowment has been cut in half. I've been having people furloughed. We need to cut back. Okay, cool. We'll focus on remarketing, the bottom of the funnel, right? And that's going to be an efficient use of funds for you. But if you're not continually filling your bucket with water, potential students, website traffic, visitors, eventually your bucket is going to run low. If you're not marketing to people, you can't remarket to them later. I think that analogy makes some sense. So there's one, real client data, two, attribution, three, the leaky bucket, which is another way of looking at attribution. And I want to talk in the next 2 minutes that I have left about a real client example and how this works. And I want to stress that I have extreme empathy for this client's position. I'm not criticizing them, I'm not naming them either. I understand why they made the decisions they made, but I want to talk about the impact of it. So this client, my agency handles SEO for. Most of our business is media buying. We have a good SEO practice. For this client, we just handle SEO. So I know what our fees are. Of their total spend in the universe, our fees for SEO are 2% of their actual budget. Search, Google, and display, which is mostly Google on display and the GDN, 54% for search, 43% for display. So that's where their budget goes. The issue is their leads, because they use a last touch attribution model, don't come from display, right? They come from remarketing and from organic and from brand name searches. So if you put these two graphs next to one another, on the top you've got what they spend money on, 43% goes to display. On the bottom you've got what they get out of these things, and because they use a last touch attribution model, it looks like only 5% of their leads come from display. If they use first touch, it would be very different. So the problem is that it's an inequitable ratio of spend to leads. The solution is the client, using last touch attribution very reasonably, says, we've got a tough time coming up. Let's turn off all the inefficiencies, pause display, turn off YouTube. I've had enough of it. The result is they get immediate cost savings. They did. The next day, Cost is down. Leaky Bucket effect is in effect. Leaky Bucket operations in effect. They're remarketing their existing leads. But I want to talk about what happens, and I've got 2 slides here. I'm going to graph out display spend. So they cut display, and this is mostly Google. They cut their display marketing from 180 to 240 down to about 60 in May. Remarketing, which is traffic that comes to the site from remarketing, fell in tandem, right? So when they were spending more, they got 4,000, 4,500 remarketed traffic visitors from remarketing, paid remarketing efforts. As they cut spend, it went to 3,000 and then 2,300. And last month in May, there was a slight blip up. So this client said, we talked to them, although we do not handle their display advertising, we have a good relationship with the agency that does. We work cross-team like that. And this client, we talked to this client, we said, it's our recommendation that you turn on display spend. I'm not getting paid for that. I have no horse in this race. It's our recommendation that you turn on display spend because it will increase remarketing traffic. It will fill up your bucket and you will get more students for cheaper later. So I'm gonna wrap this up by just saying you should fill your bucket, and that the key takeaways are that most of our clients are seeing lower costs to stay in market in front of students than they were a year ago this time, and Steph will talk about the 2. Choosing an attribution model is a key to optimal enrollments. I'm not saying that first or last is wrong. We talked about the concept of the student bucket. It's a leaky ecosystem. You have to fill the bucket. And then lastly, a real client example is everything in your marketing ecosystem is connected. So they very reasonably said, let's cut the inefficiencies, let's turn off display. But what happened is they ended up hurting their lead flow in another part of the sales funnel, so in the remarketing funnel. So that's it for me. I hope that was useful to share client data with you. I hope that that's in some way insightful for you guys. I'm going to be here for questions after, but now I'm going to listen to Ms. Schmitt while she takes us through some Google data.
Awesome. Thank you, Brooke. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right, we're good to go. Hi, everyone. So thanks for that, Brooke. Super insightful, and I love the client example. I think, in the next 30 minutes, I think a lot of the trends and the facts that I'm going to focus on that we're seeing over the past month and 3 months is exactly what Brooke is saying. So I think it's always great to see consistency given, Mason Interactive has such a strong verticalized focus in education across our whole vertical education within Google. So to give you just a quick background, I know I already dug into this, but who am I? My name's Steph. I've been at Google for 6 years, working on our agency team. And overall, we work, day in, day out with advertising agencies. Specifically, I'm headquartered in New York normally. And so Mason Interactive is one of our premier partner agencies. What that means, in short, is that they do get myself with 3 of my colleagues, all basically support Mason Interactive to make sure we're keeping them with the most up-to-date technology, Google Trends, as well as really just working day in, day out with their clients. So due to that, working with Mason the past 4 years, I've gotten a lot of exposure to the education industry. And so today, I just want to, again, kind of reiterate what are some of those more updated trends that we're seeing post kind of COVID, and again, how has these trends changed over the past 3 months? As you saw, Brooke gave some real life examples, but we just want to look at the industry as a whole and give you those stats. And then secondly, we're going to talk about how can we take action on exactly what Brooke just walked through. So in looking to capture that audience and continue to fill your funnel, what is the most effective way that we're seeing education institutions do that currently? And then finally, at the end, we are going to talk about a few tactical strategies to increase applications that are a bit more lower funnel and efficiency focused. Great. So kicking things off with, again, what are kind of the most updated trends we can share during this COVID-19 period? So generically speaking, these are the top 3 things that we're seeing, and then we'll go into more further stats to support these. So what do we know today about students? Number 1, they are planning to go back to school in the fall. Number 2, their motivations for the actions they're taking are overall largely the same. And number 3, they obviously do now have a greater preference for online and digital flexible programs than previously was considered in this process. So these stats I'm showing here were actually pulled using Google survey data back in March 2020. So I think it's just good to compare, like, what did the survey data show 3 months ago? And then next we'll look at a few other third-party resources, third-party data sources showing how that's changed in just 3 months. So again, kind of comparing these time periods, we know that 31 million students are in market for a university degree program. That's up 12% year on year back in February. The reality with COVID, when we did this survey in March, and what we saw when we asked the question, has coronavirus changed your plans to go back to school in the next year? Majority of students, 56%, said no change, 24% said potentially accelerate the plans, and 20% said plans are on hold. One more stat that we found from this survey, again, so in February, we knew that 35% of students preferred an online-only learning model, increasing to 75%, including a hybrid. So, even in February, there was a lot of preference in general to have that online hybrid, or at least, some students actually did prefer the online only model. And then we look forward to March when we did this survey, the same pool of students, it increased significantly. So we were up to 47% of prospective students saying that online offering is the most important factor as they consider going back to school. Again, so just kind of reiterating, these were the stats that we pulled back in March. So wanted to give you the latest that we found from students. That's, this is the most up-to-date data here. So when we're kind of looking at that same preference, if we're looking at the pool of incoming students, again, this study was taken, I believe it was May. 21% have changed their first choice school, most often citing cost and location. So cost of attendance being too high and potentially the school being too far away from home were two factors that were, really impacting their decision to potentially change schools. So this report from McKinsey basically found, high school students, or some of them even holding off their intentions to enroll, but they're basically just thinking of potentially cheaper and closer options. So a few of the stats I pulled out of this report was that 45% of students say COVID-19 had a strong or extremely strong impact on their emotional and mental preparedness for going to college. And then if institutions have to shift to remote learning in the fall, 32% of students do report they're most likely going to look for schools with better online capabilities. So all in all, the fact that students are really concerned about this, I would say, and we're going to talk about this later, but how can we position the offerings that you have at your university to really appeal to the fact that this is what they're looking for? So maybe they're even comparing what are the differences in online programs, and if they are looking at or considering even changing their option, or haven't made a decision yet. I think that would be the main focus areas that we can work on if we're, again, just kind of creating that branding and messaging strategy to continue to kind of fill that upper funnel. So we'll get to that in part 2 of this deck. Awesome. And one other stat I wanted to look at is, we just kind of heard what are students thinking. So what are the latest stats from overall schools? So I linked in a few of these specific sites that are tracking this consistently, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. But one updated tracker here that I included, which is from the Chronicles of Higher Education, is the source that's basically updating on a weekly basis of what kind of schools' decisions are. And so this graph on the right kind of shows their breakdown. And for the 780 colleges' fall semester plans, 67% of them are still planning to be in person. And you can see that breakdown of 7% waiting to decide, 8% planning to go online. So I think the biggest takeaway here is there is a pretty big discrepancy between what students are really concerned and looking for, and at the moment, what schools are planning on. And so again, I think the biggest thing is knowing that students are concerned about, is there going to be a hybrid or, an option to have remote learning? Considering having that in brand messaging would be key at this time, or at least a page on your website that kind of addresses this subject directly. Second point here, 53% of all presidents indicate that it's very likely their institution would resume in-person classes. And then finally, the institutions planning to stick with virtual instruction are predominantly two-year public colleges. So I think that's just one interesting call out, that the majority of the colleges that are four-year, universities and colleges are private, are the ones that are actually planning to go back in person. I think that's just one kind of distinction in terms of the breakdown when we're looking at who are the institutions that are planning to go fully online. Awesome. So switching gears into some of the Google trend data, I know that everyone's always wanting to see kind of like, at large, where's the education industry at? So this chart, again, we're looking at just overall index clicks for clients who are advertising in all of these different education categories. So I think kind of the overarching trend here is, during February, March, even April, there was, some discrepancy in overall search volume. But right where we're at now, kind of when we're looking at the most recent data in May 2020, is for the most categories, we're sort of back at where we did index last year. So although we had kind of, a lot of influx in a lot of these queries, some categories more than other, predominantly the purple line here is looking at online education and degree programs. That was the one we really saw the biggest influx during the COVID period. But for the majority of the other categories, we're kind of relatively consistent at this point and kind of stable back to the search query volume we were at last year. Awesome. Sorry. Just want to make a note here. This is looking at the overall click volume. So this is how many people are actually clicking on those ads. And then this chart similarly is showing the search query volume. So the long and short is we're just comparing what are people actually searching versus how much are those ads actually getting clicked on. And so when we look at the query volume, very consistent trend to what we see for the overall clicks. But just kind of wanted to point out, like graduate programs specifically and training and certification are some of the ones that have kind of steadily increased during COVID for overall query volume. And then the big call out, of course, we're continuing kind of to focus back on this topic, but online education degree has seen just such a huge growth in this period. So if we're looking at just May, you can see that year-on-year growth is 38%. And in April, it was actually 50% year-on-year. So overall, the online program just really seeing a huge uptick. It's actually, one of the predominantly only categories at Google that's seeing such a large increase in search volume during this time period. Great. So moving on to part two to talk kind of looping things back to exactly the example that Brooke gave. When we're thinking about the next 3 months and kind of capturing the attentions of students and continuing to increase the traffic and interest to our websites, what is the most effective way to do that? And so I'm going to walk through a few of these strategies, but I would say as kind of 3 steps to take right now, kind of this is what we're recommending for, education, colleges, universities specifically to work on during this period. So number 1 is just keeping your house in order. So working on campaign hygiene, making sure that when there's, that huge influx of volume that's coming up this summer, for people enrolling in the fall, making sure that we're in kind of that A+ position with everything for our campaign optimization. So again, using the analogy that people are, keeping their house in order now at home, I think it's a good time to just recheck in with your agency or whoever's managing your paid search on the campaign health and hygiene. Given that there will largely be increases in searches coming up. Secondly is just adjusting timing and presence. So this one's unique, I think, by industry, but the common trend that we're seeing is people are online a lot longer, given everyone's working from home. So just having kind of that 24/7 cycle and an increased online time to be able to connect with students. So whether this is something through, informational chats, if you're offering any type of a virtual consultation or, any kind of chats or recruiting techniques you're doing online, basically just opening up and extending those hours to earlier in the morning and later at night, given people are working remote and have different routines. or during the day. So I think, again, it varies by industry, but people are just a lot more flexible in terms of kind of having that ability to be online 24/7. And then the final trend here is just publishing often. So, looking for every opportunity to kind of be there for prospective students. I think kind of overall, like we just talked about, introducing the new elements of flexibility in your programs, and the more publications and messaging you can have around that to be proactive is what kind of people are looking for right now. Completely understand that's probably a difficult subject at a lot of institutions, given it might still be unknown, but I think
I assume that Steph is frozen for everyone and not just me. Because this is a webinar, it's on a slight delay. So, okay, I'm getting text messages that is the case. Let me see what I can do to fix this for you guys. 1 second. Such is the universe that we live in today. 1 second. I have her slides here. This is fun, right? This is dynamic. This is a gas. So I'm going to, yeah. So what I don't want to speak for Steph. I have her slides here. Yeah. Hi, Catherine. Yeah. So I have Steph's slides, but I don't want to step on her toes, because also she'll do a better job talking about these things than I will. So conceptually, I could go through her full funnel strategy about keeping her house in order and how people are consuming YouTube more and more often. I'll just breeze through some of this until Steph comes back on. Mira, can you text me? You can see these slides here. So people are consuming YouTube more often. We have statistics that say that 75% of all internet consumption is going to be video within the next 2 years. That's a year old. So YouTube is the place to go. Someone in the chat had a question about full funnel, top of the funnel, filling the bucket is display the way to do it. We'll get to that. So to the point that our data shows and that Google shows as well is that COVID-19 is not deterring people who are looking for a degree. If they want a degree, they're still going for it. They may be more interested in price relief. They may be more interested in a place closer to home. But demand for education and training, even at trade schools, we work with the Culinary Institute of America, you think they'd be very adversely affected because the restaurant industry, at least in New York where I live, has been decimated. Demand is up. So people are doing things like Study With Me and Let's Learn How to Cook. And we're able to capitalize that on YouTube to drive traffic to the top of the funnel. I don't want to steal Steph's thunder in this stuff, but consumers want brands to keep them in the loop. They care deeply about how people are responding to the situation. And this is for education only. We're not even talking about recent civil unrest that's finally bubbling to a head. People care about how businesses are responding. Are they changing their hours to be responsive to you? Are you suspending services? Talk to us about it. Our clients say, well, we can't have campus-based classes anymore, so we're going to transition this way. They personalize the needs. They're aware of the fact that our son, my 11-year-old son, my wife and I's son, Mason, is upstairs. And if I were going for a degree, I have to be more flexible about how I'm going to deal with him. This is a discount environment. People are looking for promotions and deals. This is happening in every industry right now. I think we can see this. I think fashion and luxury brands are being hit harder by this. But people are looking for promotions, and I have some examples of how some of our clients are dealing with that. And that's what they want. People. I mean, we don't need brands. We don't. If 5% of the people don't want brands to be communicating with them, well, that's fine. We're not going to have to talk to them. Penn Foster is an old client of ours. So we think that YouTube can help your business because 1 in 4 students say that YouTube sparked their inspiration to go back to school. We talk about this with our clients, CIA. One of the things that happens with the CIA is we use YouTube to fill the bucket So someone's looking for how to make gluten-free bread, which is a search I made the other day. And so this is a person that's interested in cooking. And now we can show an ad, a bumper ad before or after, and you only pay if someone watches the whole ad. I think we've all seen that. Do you want to click through the ad yet now? We can use those YouTube ads to help your business grow, right? So we looked at the sales funnel earlier of consideration, awareness, action, intent. We're using YouTube, which is so much cheaper than being on TV and so much more measurable. We're using YouTube to generate awareness of our clients' products. It's the same funnel again: awareness, consideration, action, and intent. One best practice is to leverage custom affinities to align your brand to relevant content. So that means that we can use custom affinity audiences across the Google network, which is not just Google, it's also YouTube. I think one thing that's super important to mention is that people think of YouTube and Google as being the same, and they're not. Google is the world's largest search engine. YouTube is the world's second largest search engine, right? It's also an entirely separate search engine. So we can use custom affinities, predetermined machine learning algorithm defined qualities of people that have certain affinities. Affinity could be, I like cooking. An affinity could be, I want to learn to fly planes. An affinity could be any number of things. And we can use those affinity groups, these custom affinity groups, to put you in front of people that weren't looking for you. This is filling the leaky bucket. This is using the power of YouTube to get in front of people. General creative guidance, this is absolutely true. You can no longer talk about things being out and about. If you had ads of people hugging, you have to immediately get rid of those. You have to get rid of, we had to do a huge creative swap 3 months ago. And that's what we get paid for, are doing these creative swaps. But this is good creative guidance from Google. Discount, back to the concept of we're in a price sensitive environment. Discounted courses have to be a possibility for you. Do you have tips and tricks around share from home? I don't know. I'm doing Google slides for here. I'm not quite sure what that one's about. Strategies for applications, for increasing applications. This is super relevant, and Steph and I aligned on this. So we can connect with users who are actively seeking a culinary education, for example, by using forms directly on YouTube, right? So we talked about YouTube being top of the funnel and introducing yourself to people, and then you go down the funnel, and we do remarketing. We can actually make YouTube, which is traditionally top of the funnel, more mid-funnel, because we can embed a capture form right in the YouTube, and this in the YouTube form. And this is a new beta that we've been lucky to get some clients in. Lead forms in search. I think some people have seen these. This is another cool beta. I don't have to leave Google and go to the website and say, yes, I'm interested in this degree. What I can do is stay right on Google. If you think about it, this reduces friction. This is a friction reducing tactic, and this increases conversions too. It's a 2-click and 3-second lead form. Is a 3-second, 2-click lead form as good as going to someone's website conversion-wise? Is it as good as a 5-page form that covers every question that the admissions team wants? No, it's not. But it is a cheap, fast way to fill your customer bucket. So I don't want to go too much more into Steph's slides. She's only got 4 more, and I don't really want to go into them without turn screen share off, without her here, because I think there's some legal stuff there too. Thank you for the way to jump in and keep things moving with glitch and technology. The truth is, I've worked with Google for a long time, so I know a lot of what they're going to do. And I hope I'm providing value for you guys. I hope this is valuable for you, even though the reality is that we have some technological problems. So I'm going to answer some questions now, and I'm going to go through here. Andrew, is there different YouTube performance for undergraduate than graduate programs? Not if you have the right audience. If you're using the same general audience across YouTube, you would not see equal amounts of productivity in your lead campaigns. But if you're using the right custom affinity audience, you should be able to get incremental gains to your revenue from all of them. Another question that someone had was, can we get the link to McKinsey? I think Steph can definitely send that to you. John Johnson, John, do you mind telling me, your question is display the best way to fill your bucket? Do you mind telling me in the chat? There's like a 3-second lag here to make sure I don't say anything inappropriate and Mira can beat me. What your institution is, and I'll just wait a hot second for that. Do you mind telling me what your school is? I can't tell if there's a delay with that question or not. The display is, I'll say that generally, display is the best way to fill your bucket, because there's no way to introduce, there's no way to make someone search for something if they don't know what it is, right? So everyone that's talked to me before, and we have some clients in here and some prospects in this list, anyone that's heard me speak before has heard me talk about how Google is a database of human intentions. If you were an alien and you wanted to know what humanity thought, you would not look at Instagram. That would be what humanity wants to tell you they think about things. You would look at Google, you would look at search queries, and you would know exactly what people think. The fact is, you can't Google something if you don't know that it exists, right? I can't Google part-time MBA classes in Ulster County, New York, which is where I am right now. I can't Google that unless I have the concept of those things existing, John. So you have to use display to introduce new consumers to fill your bucket, so that they can remarket to you. You're a specialty school. Okay, cool. Does anyone else have any questions? Are there peaks during the year when people are searching for online programs? Yes, there really, really are. I don't want to share that Google data without Google being here, because there's some confidentiality things around there that I'm frankly not allowed to talk about without Google being here. But I have clients in this that can tell you, yes. So education is seasonal. The peak for online degrees is slightly later. It's in September or October. Whether you're talking about undergrad, middle school, for boarding schools, colleges, whatever it is you're looking for, there is a valley in the summer, right? There are, in point of fact, fewer people looking for schools in the middle of the summer, no matter what kind of school you are. There is a peak. It depends on the kind of school you are later in the year. So usually it's January. January is usually peak enrollment time for colleges, and online's a little earlier. And it depends on what your business is. So if you have a school that has an online program that starts every quarter, well, then you're going to have to create demand that's not seasonal. I hope that was a helpful answer to your question. And I'm happy to go into it more when I have permission to share Google's proprietary data in front of you guys. What does the form feature on YouTube change the cost structure of your campaigns? So it's a brand new beta. I believe it's done on a CPM basis. I'm not on the operations team. I'm on the management team, so I would hate to give a wrong answer about the exact cost of that. I know that we're doing it for clients. I know that it has a cheaper cost per lead than other things on the Google network. And I know that the leads tend to be quicker and maybe not as developed, so they require a little more work time from the admissions team. But if they cost half of the cost of a regular lead, you're happy to pay for that. Do I think these metrics are equally applicable to PS, public school, PS through 12 independent schools? Yes, I do. I mentioned earlier that my wife is a high school principal of a well-regarded public school in Brooklyn, and I'm on the board of a great mission-driven school in Brooklyn that I think everyone should send their kid to, and I love it. There is a seasonality. You're welcome, Kendall. There is a seasonality, and these metrics are equally applicable to them. There's definitely a peak in a valley. There's actually more of a peak in some way, Monique, with up to 12th grade, because of the way that the school system announces at a certain point in time that this is where your kid's going to go to school. You're in this district. This is where they're going. And you got into the school you want, or you didn't get into the school you want. You have to make a quick change. That happens pretty quickly. In New York, it's determined by the Board of Ed sometime in late June. Does anyone else have any questions? What is the best way for us to approach goals? I think this is a good thing to hear from an agency. So we have a lot of clients, and I think the best way to approach goals is I like it when a client says, this is how many enrollments I want to get. Help us create a plan to get there. That's the ideal situation for us, because we've run budgets for a lot of schools. We're able to give insight across different schools for people. CPL targets can be challenging, but the first question is how many new enrollments do you want? That's the first question. What is the incremental cost that you can pay for those new enrollments, right? Online schools tend to have a lower additional incremental cost per student because they're assigning, it's not the same as a live learning situation where you have to get another classroom with another teacher and more insurance. It's usually easier, but you have to define your enrollment goals first. You have to define backwards then, and if you don't know these, we can help you with them. You have to define backwards from enrollment goals, lead goals. You have to say, this is how many leads I think I'm going to need to get, given X% of my leads convert to enrollments. And then it's just simple math backwards. If you need this many students and you can afford this much per student, this is the budget that will have to happen. And it's a very challenging issue. I keep mentioning on the board of this school, they don't, part of the reason that I want to be on the board is they don't conceive of a cost per lead target or a cost per enrollment target. They have we need X number, we need 40 new students in the 6th grade cohort next year. And we're working with them to define what the cost per lead going backward is. If you tell them we're going to need $50,000 to get those 40 students, they would kick me out of the room because that's the wrong way to answer the question. Really what they need is the students, and you work backwards from there. And I hope that's helpful, John, but that's sort of what we do for a living. And we can talk more about that if you'd like. You market to people under 18 carefully. You market to people under 18 by going after their parents is the honest truth. We have some data around. I mean, I know what my son is doing upstairs on YouTube. Thanks, John. I know what my son is doing on my YouTube account upstairs right now because it's linked to mine. But the answer is you go after their parents, or you use mailers, or you can talk about TikTok, which we're using for some clients. For YouTube ads, what time would you run? What run time would you recommend for awareness and then remarketing? So Erica, without knowing who your school is and without knowing your enrollment goals, I'm going to say that we have to let the data drive the decision. I don't want to tell you that you should be 6 second, 15 second, 5 minute, or 1 second. Every school is different. Every cohort is different. Everyone's enrollment goals are different. Everyone's creative capabilities are different. Some people can't make a 1 second ad. They just got one 30-second one they made 2 years ago. So we have to let the data drive the decision. We have clients that have 6 second ads that outperform, and we have clients that have 15 second ads that outperform. And I don't care to parse why. I just care to follow that data and double down on what actually works. I'm sure that a lot if you talk to me. We're very data focused. We're very fluid with the budgets based in the data. By the way, I'm happy to answer more questions. I usually try to keep these things for half an hour because I think no one has patience. I certainly don't. So I appreciate you guys hanging out. I'm happy to stick around and answer questions. I'm going to say that we should put a cap on this of another 2 minutes from now, and then depending on how many questions come in. But I don't want anyone to feel compelled. Sure, Erica. Kendall, this year we tried to target students who had an offer on YouTube using Google's hash data feature. We noticed we weren't getting impressions, so we changed the bid to significantly higher value. Does the bidding strategy change when we use a targeted audience? Yes. A more valuable, more targeted audience costs more to get to. A wider general audience costs less to get to. One way to think about that is it costs much less to go to Google and YouTube right now and reach an audience the size of the Super Bowl, right, on YouTube. It costs a lot less to do it on YouTube with such a wide audience. But if you said I only wanted to target people who were interested in post-secondary degrees, all of a sudden that's a more specialized audience. And yes, the CPM on that, the cost per impression, the cost per click is going to go up. The other part of it is that Google is changing their bidding strategies in a good way to automate them and to say basically, forget your bid, tell us what position you want to be on. And Google's saying, because their data shows, if you're not in the top position, you're not getting a lot of value and people are not really going to be seeing your ads. So yeah, you need to pay more to get top of page. You need to pay more for a specialized audience. You're welcome, Catherine. Any last questions before I sign off? Again, we will be sending a recording of this. Mea culpa, I believe my sales team will probably be reaching out to anyone who attended. That's their job. Do you recommend marketing on Twitch? We do not have a lot of luck with Twitch. I don't want to ever say no to a platform. There was a time 9 years ago when I'd say no to Facebook, unbelievably. We're seeing more luck with Snap and then TikTok. I know my son's on Twitch when he's thinking about Fortnite, but we see our way of reaching that market is with TikTok right now. I'm not saying no to Twitch. We're just doing a lot of TikTok and Snap. Thanks, Noreen. All right, I'm going to end this at 46 minutes. I sincerely appreciate everyone sticking around, and I apologize for the technical difficulties. I hope I did a halfway job putting my Google hat on for a few minutes. I really appreciate everyone, and we will. I'm going to end this meeting, and I'll talk to you all later, I hope. Thank you very much, guys.